The sky was dark long before the sun went down. Heavy clouds rolled across the frozen horizon, hiding the light of the two moons. The air was sharp like knives, cutting through skin and bone. The storm had been growing for hours, and now it had become something alive. Wind screamed through the valley, carrying shards of ice like arrows. The villagers locked their doors and prayed to survive the night. Inside a small hut, a mother held her child close. Her arms were shaking, not only from the cold, but from fear. The boy's breath was weak, his face pale. His body burned with fever, and every cough seemed like it would tear him apart. The storm outside was too strong for anyone to go out. No one dared. The boy needed help, but help was far away. The mother looked around the room. Shadows danced across the walls as the fire in the hearth grew smaller. The wood was almost gone. Without fire, they would freeze. Without medicine, the boy would die. Her eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them quickly. She had to stay strong for her son, even if her own heart was breaking. The villagers whispered about the storm. They said it was not a normal storm. The old ones remembered stories told long ago, stories about creatures that moved under the ice when the wind grew wild. Some believed it was only a legend. Others swore it was true. No one wanted to test it. But then, through the blinding snow, a figure appeared. A man. He was not from the village. He was taller, stronger, with eyes that burned like fire against the cold. He stood outside while the storm howled around him. His coat was heavy, his boots thick, but no clothing could truly protect a man from a storm like this. Still, he did not turn away. He stood firm, like a wall against the wind. The villagers watched him from their windows. "He is mad," one said. "No man can survive out there," another whispered. Yet none of them could look away. There was something about him, something different. He walked forward with slow, steady steps, as if the storm itself had no power over him. The mother saw him too. Her heart beat faster. Could this stranger be the answer to her silent prayers? She wanted to call out, but fear held her tongue. What if he vanished like a ghost in the snow? What if he was only a trick of her tired mind? She closed her eyes and opened them again. He was still there, real, moving closer. The boy stirred in her arms. His lips were dry, his voice a whisper. "Mama, is someone coming?" She held him tighter. "Yes, my son," she said softly, though she was not sure. "Yes, someone is coming." Outside, the storm grew worse. The wind was no longer only sound, it carried voices, whispers, cries that did not belong to any human throat. The ice cracked underfoot, long lines splitting across the frozen ground. Something moved beneath, like shadows swimming in the deep. The man did not stop. He reached the center of the village and raised his hand. In his grip was a strange tool, glowing faint blue, humming softly like a living heart. The villagers gasped. None of them had ever seen such a thing. The mother pressed her face against the window, watching. The man's eyes scanned the houses, searching until they found hers. For a brief moment, their eyes met. She felt as if he had seen her pain, her fear, and her desperate hope. He nodded once, a silent promise. The boy coughed again, weaker this time. She looked down at him, panic rising. She knew he could not last the night. She turned back to the window, and the man was gone. Her breath caught in her throat. Had he disappeared? Was he taken by the storm? Then came a knock at her door. The sound was soft, almost lost in the roar of the storm, but it was there. 3 knocks, steady and sure. She froze, her heart pounding. No villager would come at this hour. No one would risk stepping outside. Slowly, she rose to her feet, still holding her child. Step by step, she moved to the door. Her hand trembled as she touched the wooden handle. The storm wailed outside, louder, angrier, as if it knew what was about to happen. She opened the door, and there he was, the stranger. Snow clung to his coat, ice to his hair, but his eyes were clear and strong. He looked at the boy in her arms, then back at her. "I can help," he said. His voice was calm, steady, and full of something she had never felt before. Compassion. The mother could not speak. For the first time that night, she felt a spark of hope, but behind the stranger, in the storm, shadows moved again. The ice cracked louder, closer. The danger was not over. It was only beginning. The mother stood frozen at the doorway. The storm roared behind the stranger, yet he did not flinch. Snow and shards of ice lashed his face, but his eyes did not look away from hers. They were calm, steady, and full of promise. He had spoken only 3 words. "I can help," but those words were enough to make her heart tremble. She did not know this man. He was not from the village, not from their people. His clothes were strange, his tool even stranger. The blue glow from the device in his hand pulsed like a heartbeat, sending light across the white snow. For a moment, she wondered if he was human at all, or something beyond. But when he looked at her child, she saw something no creature of the storm could have dashed compassion. The villagers began to whisper. Doors cracked open. Faces appeared, cautious, afraid. No one stepped out, but all of them watched. They had seen storms before. They had heard the old tales, and they knew what waited in the dark. No one wanted to risk their life for another. Survival meant silence. Survival meant staying inside. Yet this stranger walked forward. The mother stepped aside, and the man entered the hut. His boots left deep prints of snow on the wooden floor. The warmth of the dying fire brushed his coat, steam rising from the melting frost. He knelt beside the child, his movements slow, gentle. He did not ask permission. He simply placed his hand against the boy's forehead. The boy opened his eyes, weak and pale, but when he looked at the stranger, he tried to smile. "Are you an angel?" The boy whispered. The man shook his head. "No, little one. I'm just someone who won't let you go." The mother felt her throat tightened. She had begged the villagers for help before. None had answered. Yet this man, a stranger, risked the storm for a child he did not know. But then the sound came again. A low rumble, not from the wind, not from the ice above, but from beneath. The ground shivered. The flames in the hearth flickered. The boy whimpered and hid his face against his mother's chest. The man stood, his eyes narrowing. He looked toward the door as if he could see through the walls. His hand tightened on the glowing tool, the faint hum turning sharper, brighter. "They are moving," he said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. The mother's eyes widened. "What do you mean? Who is moving?" He turned back to her. "The storm is not only wind. Something else is inside it." Before she could answer, the ice cracked outside, loud and sharp like a breaking bone. The villagers gasped. One door slammed shut. Another window shuttered closed. Fear spread like fire through dry wood. Still, the man walked toward the door. "Wait." The mother cried. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. "If you go out now, you will not come back." He looked at her again. For a moment, she saw pain in his eyes, not fear, but sorrow, as if he had carried this burden before. "I did not come here to hide," he said. "I came here because a child was calling." The boy coughed weakly, his small voice breaking through the howling storm. "Don't leave." The man's expression softened. He crouched down and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I will not leave you. I will bring back what you need. But you must be brave, just a little longer." The boy nodded. Though his eyes were wet with tears, the mother wanted to hold the man back, to beg him not to go. But something inside her stopped her. She realized that he was not like the villagers. He was not afraid of the storm. He was not afraid of the legends. He carried with him a strength that did not belong to this frozen world. And then she understood he was human. The villagers had seen humans before, wandering across the stars, strange and distant. They had always seemed cold, proud, untouchable. But this one was different. He carried fire in his heart, not in his weapons. He had heard a child's cry and stepped forward when no one else dared. The man rose again. He pulled his coat tighter, lifted the glowing tool, and opened the door. The storm screamed into the hut, throwing snow across the room, rattling the walls. But he did not hesitate. He stepped out into the fury, the wind swallowing his shape until he was only a dark figure moving into the serre. Moving into the white dot, the mother clutched her son and watched him go. She felt her heart split between hope and dread. The storm was not just whether Wit was a graveyard. No one came back once the ice chose them, but she remembered his words. "I'm just someone who won't let you go." The villagers whispered again behind their doors. "He is going to die," one muttered. "No man can fight the storm," another hissed. But the mother shook her head. For the first time, she did not believe them. The stranger walked into the storm, step by step, vanishing into the darkness. The ice cracked again, louder this time, as if something under the ground had awakened. The whispers in the wind grew clearer, almost words, almost voices, calling from below. The mother held her son tighter. She did not know if the man would survive, but she knew one thing with certainty: nothing would ever be the same again. The storm swallowed him whole. The villagers could no longer see his figure, only the glow of his tool, flickering like a dying star in the endless white. The mother stood at the door, holding her son close, waiting for that light to return. But it grew smaller, weaker, until it was gone. Her heart sank. Was he already lost? The boy stirred against her chest. "Mama, he will come back, right?" His small voice shook. She did not answer. She could not. Instead, she whispered to herself, "Please, let him come back." Far from the safety of the huts, the stranger pushed forward. The wind tore at him. Snow cut across his skin, but he kept walking. His breath fogged the air, then froze in tiny crystals on his beard. Every step was heavier than the last, as though the ice itself was pulling him down. Then he heard it, a sound beneath his boots, deep, hollow, and alive. A groan, long and heavy, like something ancient waking from sleep. The ground shook, and cracks spread across the frozen surface in long, jagged lines. He stopped and lowered the glowing tool, pressing it against the ice. The hum grew louder, and strange patterns lit up beneath his feet, webs of blue veins spreading through the ice like blood through flesh. The storm's howling wind carried whispers. At first they were soft, only fragments. Then they grew louder, clearer, almost words. "Leave, leave. This is not for you." He clenched his jaw. He had heard voices like these before, in places where man was not welcome, on worlds that hated intruders. But this was not the time to turn back. Somewhere ahead, a child's life was fading, and that was reason enough. The ice trembled again. A dark shadow moved beneath the surface, long, twisting, alive. He followed it with his eyes as it slid across the frozen ground, circling him. The villagers were right. The storm was not only storm. Something else lived here. Something that hunted. Back in the village, doors shook against the wind. The people gathered in fear, whispering the stories their grandparents had once told them. The ice is not dead. The ice remembers. The ice, Hunger. The mother pressed her forehead to the window, searching for any sign of him. But the white wall of the storm gave nothing back. The boy coughed again, weaker than before. "Mama, it's cold." His tiny hand clutched her sleeve. "Do you think he's scared?" She brushed his hair, forcing a smile. "No, my son. He is not scared of anything." But her voice cracked as she spoke. The stranger knelt, placing his hand against the ice. The whispers grew stronger, crawling into his mind like spiders. They spoke of cold, of hunger, of endless sleep. They promised him nothing but death if he stayed. But he smiled faintly. "I've been promised death before." He slammed the glowing tool into the ground. The ice shuddered violently. The hum turned into a sharp, ringing tone, cutting through the storm like a blade. For a moment, the whispers stopped. The shadows under the ice retreated. Then the silence broke. The surface exploded. Shards of ice flew into the air as something broke through a massive shape. White and shifting, half solid, half transparent, like a creature made of frozen glass. Its eyes glowed pale blue, empty and endless. Its voice was not a roar, but a scream carried on the wind, piercing every ear in the village. The villagers cried out and slammed their shutters. Children screamed. Even the strongest men fell to their knees. The mother held her boy tight. His eyes widened in terror. "Mama, what is that?" She did not answer. She could not. The creature circled the stranger, its body sliding across the ice like a serpent of glass. Wherever it passed, the ground cracked and groaned. The storm itself seemed to bend around it, as if it was the storm's heart. The man stood tall, tool in hand, facing it without fear. The glow in his weapon pulsed brighter, commensuring the creature's light. "You've been feeding on fear for too long," he said quietly. "But not tonight." The creature hissed, its voice entering his mind, twisting his thoughts. "Leave, human. This world is not yours. The ice will take you." He raised his weapon. "Maybe, but not before I save that child." The storm screamed louder, and the creature lunged in the village. The ground shook. The mother fell to her knees, clutching her son. She heard the crash of ice, the howl of the storm, the cries of something not meant to exist. Her heart raced. Every beat screamed the same question. Was the stranger still alive? The boy, weak but awake, whispered, "Mama, he's fighting for us, isn't he?" She held him close and nodded, even though her tears ran freely. "Yes, my son. He is fighting for you." She looked out into the storm, where nothing could be seen. But deep inside, she felt something she had never felt before. Hope, because even against a living ice, the stranger had not turned back. The ice creature struck like lightning. Its body twisted, its sharp edges slicing through the frozen ground. Each movement shattered the surface, throwing shards of ice into the air. The stranger dodged, rolling to the side, the glowing tool humming brighter in his hand. The storm raged louder, as if cheering for the beast. He planted his boots firmly and raised the tool high. A pulse of blue light shot out, striking the ice beneath the monster. Cracks spread like spiderwebs, forcing the creature back for a moment. But the victory was small. The beast reformed, its body shifting like liquid glass, eyes burning with cold fire. It lunged again. The man met it head-on, slashing with the tool. Sparks of blue light burst where the weapon struck, cutting through part of the creature's icy form. The beast screamed, a sound that rattled the bones of everyone in the village. Windows shook. Children cried. But the mother's eyes stayed on the storm. She whispered, "Please, don't let him fall." The stranger's breath grew heavy, steam turning to frost around his face. His muscles burned, but he did not stop. Each strike of his weapon sent light flashing through the storm. Still, the creature pressed harder, stronger. Then, over the roar of the battle, he heard a faint sound. A cry, He turned his head and saw what had pulled him into the storm in the first place. A small figure trapped at the edge of the frozen lake. A child. The ice beneath the boy was thin, breaking apart. One wrong step, and he would be swallowed by the black water below. The man's heart pounded. That was the child he had come to save. The creature lunged again, blocking his path. The boy screamed as the ice cracked louder beneath him. The man had no time. He tightened his grip on the tool and shouted into the storm. Not today. With a fierce swing, he drove the weapon into the ground. Light erupted, blasting outward in a circle. The creature staggered back, its body shattering into shards before reforming. It screamed. But the attack bought him seconds just enough. He ran. Snow whipped against his face as he charged across the cracking ice. The boy's small arms reached out, tears freezing on his cheeks. Help, please. The man dove forward as the ice gave way. He caught the child in his arms just as the ground collapsed into the dark water. For one terrifying moment, he felt the cold bite of the abyss pulling them down. But he slammed his weapon into the ice above, anchoring them. He pulled the child up, clutching him close against his chest. The boy shook, his lips blue, but he was alive. Back in the village, the mother screamed when she saw them. Her knees gave way, tears streaming down her face. The villagers crowded behind their doors, watching the impossible scene through cracks in the shutters. The stranger had saved the child. But the storm was not finished. The creature rose again, larger than before. Its voice filled the air, not in words, but in rage. The ground split beneath it, sending waves of ice rippling across the frozen lake. The man held the boy tight with one arm and raised the glowing tool with the other. His body shook from exhaustion, but his eyes burned with fire. He planted his feet and turned his back to the storm, shielding the boy with his own body. "You're safe now," he whispered into the child's ear. "No matter what happens, you're safe." The boy clung to him, trembling. The creature lunged once more, its massive body crashing down. The man braced himself, every muscle ready to break. But he did not let go of the child. The mother pressed her face against the glass of her window, watching through tears. She saw the stranger standing there, defiant against the storm, protecting a child with nothing but his strength and his will. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. She had lived her whole life believing that survival meant staying hidden, staying safe, letting the storm claim what it wanted. But here was this man-human, fragile, mortal who stood against death itself because one child needed him. Compassion, she had never seen it before. Now it burned brighter than any fire. The creature struck again. The ice cracked wide open, swallowing half the frozen lake. The man staggered, nearly falling. The child cried out, but he roared, a sound that cut through the storm like thunder. He swung his weapon in a wide arc, releasing a wave of light so bright it blinded the village for a moment. The creature screamed as the light tore through its form. Pieces of it shattered, falling into the black water, vanishing into the depths. The storm wailed, furious, but weaker now. The man stood tall, the boy still safe in his arms. He turned, facing the village. Step by step, he began to walk back across the ice. Behind him, the storm still raged, but the creature did not rise again. For now. The stranger carried the boy across the broken ice, every step heavy with danger. The child clung to him, weak but alive. Behind them, the storm still howled. The wind screamed like 1,000 voices, angry and cruel. But the creature had not vanished. The ice shook. From the black water, shards rose again, twisting together, reforming the beast. Its body grew taller, sharper, more furious. Its pale eyes fixed on the man, burning with cold hate. The villagers gasped from behind their doors. The mother cried out, her voice lost in the wind. She saw the monster rise again, larger than before. And she saw the stranger stumbling, blood staining the snow where ice had cut into his side. He could barely stand, but he did not put the boy down. His arms were steady, his grip unshakable. The creature hissed, its voice slithering into his mind. You cannot win, human. You bleed, you freeze, you break. Give the child to the ice. Give yourself. The man gritted his teeth. His lips were pale, his breath shallow, but his eyes glowed with fire. I don't give children to the dark, he growled. He set the boy down gently on the snow, close to the edge of the village. Run, he whispered. But the boy shook his head, tears streaming down his face. No, don't leave me. The man knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. His voice softened. I won't leave you. I just need to hold the storm back. Go to your mother. Be brave. The boy's small hands clung to him, refusing. The mother rushed out of her door, against all warnings, against all fear. The villagers shouted after her, but she ignored them. She fell to her knees in the snow, reaching out. Come to me, my child. The boy hesitated, then slowly turned. With trembling steps, he ran into his mother's arms. She pulled him close, sobbing in relief. The man rose again, facing the creature alone. The storm twisted around him. Snow blinded his eyes. His wounds burned. His body screamed for rest. But his heart refused. The creature lunged, massive claws of ice slashing toward him. He met the attack with a roar, swinging the glowing tool. The blue light cut deep, breaking off parts of the beast's frozen body. Shards exploded across the ground, but the monster reformed again, stronger, endless. The villagers watched in silence, their fear mixing with awe. Never had they seen anyone fight for another like this. Never had they seen a man give so much for a child not his own. The battle raged. The man bled more with every strike, his strength fading. His knees shook, his breath came in gasps. Yet still he stood, because the child was safe. Because compassion gave him power the storm could not understand. The creature hissed, You will break. You will fall. The ice takes all. The man spat blood into the snow. Then take me. But you will not touch the child. He charged. With the last of his strength, he drove his weapon deep into the creature's chest. Blue light exploded outward, blinding the village. The beast screamed, a sound so sharp it split the night sky. Its body cracked, fractured, split apart into shards that flew across the storm. But the power cut through the man as well. The weapon drained him, burning his strength, freezing his blood. He fell to one knee, gasping, his hands trembling. The mother screamed. No, get up. Please, get up. She tried to run to him, but the villagers held her back. The ground shook too violently, the storm too wild. The man raised his head, his eyes glowing faintly blue, the last of the weapon's light reflecting inside them. He smiled faintly at the mother and child. You're safe now. The creature shattered, breaking into 1,000 pieces, each vanishing into the snow like dust. The storm screamed one last time, then began to weaken. The wind slowed. The air grew calmer. For the first time in hours, silence touched the village, but the man was still on his knees, blood staining the snow around him. He leaned on his weapon, forcing himself upright, though his body trembled. Every step he took was a battle against collapse. The mother broke free from the villagers and ran to him, her child in her arms. She dropped to her knees beside him, tears running down her face. You saved him. You saved us all. Please, don't leave now. The man looked at her, his eyes tired but warm. I didn't come here to live, he whispered. I came here to protect. And with that, his knees buckled again. He fell into the snow, the glow of his weapon flickering weakly. The villagers rushed forward now, no longer hiding, no longer silent. They formed a circle around the man, looking at him with awe. Some bowed their heads. Some whispered prayers. The mother cradled her child with one arm and pressed her other hand against the man's chest, desperate to feel his heart still beating. "Don't die," she begged. "Don't let the ice take you." The boy reached out with his tiny hands, touching the stranger's frozen fingers. "You can't go," he whispered. "You promised me." The man's lips curved into a faint smile. His eyes closed slowly, his breath shallow but steady. For now, he still lived. But the storm had taken its price. The storm was broken. For the first time in hours, the wind weakened. Snow fell softer, no longer cutting like knives. The furious roar that had filled the sky turned into silence, heavy and strange. The villagers stepped from their huts, blinking into the white night. Afraid yet drawn forward, at the center of the frozen ground, the stranger knelt. His glowing weapon lay dim beside him, its light fading. His chest rose and fell slowly, painfully, as though each breath cost him everything he had left. Blood marked the snow, a trail of sacrifice leading back to the place where the creature had fallen. The mother rushed forward, clutching her child against her chest. Her feet slipped on the ice, her knees bled, but she did not stop until she reached him. She fell beside the stranger, her tears spilling freely. "Please, stay with us," she begged. "You can't leave now." The boy reached out, his small hand brushing against the stranger's face. "You said you wouldn't go," he whispered, his voice trembling. The man's eyes opened slowly, tired, heavy, but alive. He looked at them both and tried to smile. His lips cracked with the effort, but still, it was a smile. "Keep my promises," he said softly. The mother let out a cry that was part sob, part relief. She pulled the child closer, her heart pounding with hope. For the first time in her life, she had seen someone fight, not for survival, not for themselves, but for another. For her child, the villagers gathered around in silence. Faces that once hid behind shutters now stared openly, eyes wide with awe. Some of them knelt. Others pressed their hands over their hearts. None of them spoke. They knew they were seeing something their kind had never witnessed before. One of the elders stepped forward, his voice shaking. "No one has ever stood against the ice and lived. No one has ever returned." He looked at the stranger as though he were not flesh and blood, but something greater. But the man shook his head. He coughed, blood staining the snow, and whispered, "I am no hero. I am only human." The villagers looked at each other. The word tasted strange on their tongues, but powerful. Human Nod, the mother tore part of her cloak and pressed it against his wounds. Her hands trembled as she worked, fear and determination warring inside her. "You cannot die," she whispered fiercely. "Not after what you've done?" The man's eyes closed for a moment. His breath came in shallow waves, but then he forced them open again. He turned his gaze to the boy. "Are you warm now?" The boy nodded quickly, tears streaming down his face. "Because of you. You kept me safe." The man's expression softened, and his voice dropped to a whisper. Then it was worth it. Behind them, the shattered ice lake groaned one last time. Cracks spread wider, deep into the black water below. The villagers stepped back in fear. But nothing rose from it. The beast was gone, or perhaps sleeping once more. The stranger looked at the dark hole where the creature had vanished. His voice was faint but certain. "It's not dead. It never dies. It will come again." The villagers shivered. Fear tightened their throats. But the mother lifted her chin. She held her son close and looked at the stranger. "Then we will remember. We will not hide next time." Her words surprised even her. She had lived her whole life in fear. Yet now, looking at him, she felt something stronger. Courage. The man struggled to rise. His arms shook, his body weak, but he forced himself onto his feet. The villagers gasped, rushing to support him, but he waved them back. He wanted no worship, no pity. Step by step, he walked forward, the mother and child beside him. Through the storm's fading mist, the villagers saw it, a figure, broken but unyielding, carrying the weight of survival on his shoulders. Each step left blood in the snow, yet his posture was proud. He did not walk like a man defeated. He walked like a man who had chosen to stand when no one else would. When they reached the heart of the village, the boy broke free of his mother's arms. He ran to the stranger's side and held his hand tightly. The man looked down, startled, then let out a soft laugh that melted even the coldest hearts. The villagers watched in silence, something awakening inside them, compassion. It was a word they had never known, a fire they had never felt. But now it lived in their chests, burning warmer than any hearth. This stranger lay on the wooden bed inside the mother's hut. His body was weak, his wounds deep, but he still breathed. Each rise and fall of his chest was a victory. The villagers crowded around, silent, watching. They had never seen a man like him. They had never seen anyone fight for another with such fire. The mother sat beside him, her child asleep in her lap. Her hands never left the man's side. Every time his breath slowed, she whispered, "Stay with us." And every time he answered with another painful breath. The fire in the hearth burned strong now. The villagers had brought wood from their own homes, piling it high. No one had offered so freely before. Survival had always meant keeping for oneself. But tonight, something had changed. They shared. They gave, because of him. The elder stepped forward. His voice trembled with age and wonder. We always believed compassion was weakness. We thought kindness would kill us faster than the cold. But this man... He paused, shaking his head, his eyes shining. This man showed us it is strength. The villagers murmured in agreement. Some touched their hearts, others bowed their heads. The word passed among them like a spark leaping from one soul to another. Human. The stranger opened his eyes, weak but aware. He looked around at the circle of faces. For the first time, he did not see fear in them. He saw hope. Slowly, he forced himself to sit up. Pain lanced through his body, but he endured it. The villagers tried to stop him, but he raised his hand. He wanted to stand. With trembling legs, he rose. The hut fell silent. Every eye followed him. He looked at the mother, at the boy, then at the villagers. His voice was low, but it carried to all of them. You think I am strong. You think I am different. But I am only human. The villagers leaned closer, listening. He continued. Human strength is not in muscle, not in weapons. It is here. He placed a hand on his chest. In the heart. In compassion. We fight not for ourselves, but for each other. That is what makes us powerful. His words struck them deeper than any storm. Some began to weep. Others clenched their fists with new resolve. They had never heard such truth spoken aloud. The boy stirred in his mother's arms, waking. His small voice filled the silence. Mama, he saved me. The mother nodded, tears falling freely. She looked at the stranger and whispered, You gave me back my child. You gave us more than life. You gave us hope. The man looked at her with weary eyes and answered, No. Your people gave themselves hope. I only reminded you it was already there. Outside, the storm was gone. The sky cleared, revealing the 2 moons shining silver across the ice. For the first time in years, the villagers stepped outside without fear. They looked at the stars above, endless and bright. The elder spoke softly, almost in prayer. We will not be the same. We will not hide anymore. We will fight for each other. That is what it means to live. The villagers nodded. Some reached for each other's hands, something they had never done before. For the first time, warmth spread through the cold, not from fire, but from unity. The stranger stood in the doorway, the light of the moons painting him in silver. His body was broken, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He looked back at the mother, at the child now safe in her arms, and then at the village. "You will face the storm again," he said. "You will face the creatures again. But now you know the truth. Compassion is stronger than fear. And humanity," he paused, his voice steady. "Humanity always rises." The villagers bowed their heads. "Not in worship, but in respect," the mother whispered. "We will never forget." The boy ran to the stranger one last time, hugging his leg tightly. "Don't go," he pleaded. The man bent down, ruffling the child's hair with a tired smile. "I can't stay. But you'll carry what I gave you." "That's how I never leave." The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded bravely. The stranger turned, walking into the night. His steps were slow, but strong. The villagers watched him go until he vanished into the horizon, a lone figure against the endless ice, and from that night on, the village was never the same. They spoke of the storm, of the creature, of the man who fought the impossible. They told the story to their children, and their children told it to theirs, not as a tale of fear, not as a warning, but as a lesson that compassion is the fire that never freezes, that humanity is the power that never breaks, and that one man, one human, had shown them a truth stronger than any storm.